Welcome to the Matt and Dale podcast, episode 1.
We're live. We're not live, but we're ready to go.
Recording. Good to be here, Matt.
Yes, it is good. It's something we've both been looking forward to for quite a while. I think, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it'll be good to just sort of explain to the public a little bit about our backgrounds, just so that, they understand the human being behind who we are and a little bit about our journey that we've gone on, which I think is important because let's face it, I don't know about you, but it hasn't been that easy at times to get where I'm seated today.
That's right. Yeah. So tell me, Dale, how did you get into this, well, into your role? Like when did it sort of start? Like,
Oh, it's almost like a life story to go through it, but
yeah,
I'll try and spare you that. All the detail and all the timeline in terms of detail, but it is kind of a little bit having to go back into the trauma, the low self-esteem, um, a time in my life where the growing pains where I didn't have a compass to direct me out of where I was. And that really stems back, gosh, I don't know, probably school, if I'm completely honest, from schoolyard bullying or being the recipient of such, into moving into professions that weren't probably really suited to me. I did an accounting degree at Monash, and it was, some years ago now. Um, and finding out that that really wasn't for me in my professional life, moving through two redundancies as such in that profession and having the low self-esteem that accompanies, well, having a low self-esteem and then accompanying those decisions, the hit to the guts when you're really questioning who you are and if you're good enough and all those types of things. And this timeline goes back to probably, well, I'm 55 now, so I'm talking probably when I was, I don't know, 25 or some 26, 27 when I started my professional life after uni. And really just, I think at the end of the day, I just didn't know who I was, but I was starting to glean little bits and pieces. Um, I remember sitting doing a massive like bank reconciliation for it was a large company. I was actually up in Sydney at the time because I'd moved to Sydney from Melbourne. And it just wasn't for me the amount of detail. And then I saw all these like I was working in like a magazine, organization. I won't say exactly who it was, but there was a lot of editorial people coming down, and I said, I want their job. I want to do what they do because I could already see that I was much more sort of people orientated than probably suited to working behind a desk.
yeah, sure.
And I think I got made redundant from that job, or my role got made redundant. And then I got into the recruiting of accountants, which was much more my
Yeah,
style.
yeah.
And I did that industry for, 15, 16, 17 years. So I became quite good at it. I would say I wasn't like completely suited to it, but the interactions with people, and this is where I'm getting into the counseling theme because if you can imagine working in the recruitment industry, which is obviously, you know, it's a little bit like a real estate agent for who, people who don't know it in the corporate sector, but you're basically getting the jobs on or the listings in the real estate world, and then you've got to find the candidates in real estate, it would be the buyers, right? And you're brokering the deal effectively. Um, it was a
Wow.
very money orientated industry. But it utilized my people skills and well, I should say aptitude for working with people. And I was able to develop my people skills in doing a lot of assessments, interviews, which obviously, lends itself almost to doing to a degree in similarities of what I do today in a counseling capacity or role. And then it just got to a point where I did that, but I kind of felt this sort of soullessness, if that's a word, I felt
Yeah,
soulless
yeah, yeah.
because I was just doing it, but I was doing it for money,
The money,
effectively.
yeah.
I mean, I was helping people get jobs, and that was nice. But I always noticed myself erring on the counseling side of someone looking for a job. Do you see
Interesting.
what I mean? So I leaned into that area and coaching, counseling, and that kind of almost, if I'd had, you know, a lens looking back, I would have go, oh, you see, this is the path you're going to go on into where you are now.
Yeah,
But
you
it it
can't you
it
can't see it at that time though, can you?
no, no, no. I hadn't worked on myself at all, really, or enough. I mean, I was an avid
Yeah.
self-help book reader, and I can recite many books that I've read. If I could actually remember them now, I probably can't actually, to tell the truth. But I was always searching for more, like
Yeah,
in
yeah,
that kind of area, and recruitment didn't really do it. And I think I got to a point with recruitment is that, I remember being in Sydney, there was an expat job to go to Tokyo, because we just set up an office there, or a little bit earlier, a year before that, and I went over to manage a team of people over there. I did that relatively successfully. My management skills probably back then weren't great, and I didn't have a lot of tolerance and some of the things that I believe I do have these days. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute, but and how I got that. But I was able to be relatively successful there. I mean, I build money, and, I made some great introductions, and, um, I guess at that point, interestingly, the partying really started to happen for me, and we were making quite a lot of money, or I was making quite a lot of money, and but we were partying a lot too, a lot of
yeah,
nightclubs, and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
just that world, and festivals, etc. So, that kind of almost superseded my career. That was becoming my career, and that was an interesting time. And I think it was just I was again sort of seeking something that was certainly not getting fulfilled in a professional capacity. Money wasn't cutting it. It was nice to have, but it was, I was kind of making it and using it, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just continued that lifestyle until I really got to a point, and then I'd moved from Tokyo, I'd gone back, so went up to Hong Kong for a bit, and that's when the partying really took hold of me. And again, I was functional, doing okay, but really wasn't putting the energy and time into my career because of, really it was the after hours stuff that I preferred to my career, to be honest. So kept
Yeah.
doing and doing that, and I just ended up in holes, and that's where it started to get really, really kind of edgy and problematic. Um, and I'm kind of getting to a point here. I know it's a long-winded answer, but um, it is an
Okay.
intro, isn't it, to sort of frame things. And then I then I think went to Singapore, and it was just the same result. I'd kind of started the business really well, and it was going okay, and then it was just the partying that took over, and addiction issues, reading between the lines if I haven't stated it. So, it was bare bones addiction. And the problem with addiction is that, and we're talking now 2010, the problem with it is that, it starts with a party with lots of people, but it ends in a lot of isolation and solitary, as I call it.
100%.
And I
Yeah.
know that, I know that you'll speak later about your background, and you can relate to that. And it just got to a point where I was in Singapore at the time, and things were just starting to get a bit, I'll call it internally scary. I just wasn't myself. And I came back to Australia, like after pretty much 7 years of living abroad in Asia. And, I was a little bit tail between my legs. I booked myself into a rehab, um, where I stayed, and I self-funded for 12 months, which was a great rehab. It was it was in Toorak at the time. It sounds really plush, but it was still a rehab. I can tell you that much. Um, and that just completely transformed my world in a very, very challenging way. I was all, you know, I was exposed there, right? So meaning I went in and, I could still talk the talk and network and stuff. But the reality of group therapy, so rehab is, group therapy, residential stay. I'm talking about the, in-house residential stays and, one-on-one counseling. And then it was really the first time that I'd ever really heard or seen what a false existence I was leading. And I guess I was sort of stated the who I wasn't
Yeah.
versus the who I was, who I still hadn't found out that yet. You've almost got to go through that for me anyway, the who I wasn't to the dysfunctional who I wasn't, I call it, to literally have that shatter and then to then be exposed for what the
Mm.
reality was, someone with extreme low self-esteem, extreme uh, depressive tendencies as well, depression symptom tendencies. I
Mm.
wasn't clinically depressed or anything. Um, Extremely shy,
Yeah.
um, interestingly. Um,
Yeah.
it wasn't that interesting back then. I could have used other words, but it was intolerable. The actual state of who I recognized and who I was then after the ego had been kind of literally, shattered into pieces and, um, you know,
Okay.
put on the floor. And it really then became, there was three ways I could go. I always look at it. There's three ways at that point. I could stay as I was. That was just not an option. I could go back out and, as they say, research again in terms of, addiction,
Mm.
or I could change.
Mm.
And I think I chose research initially because it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
challenging.
Oh,
I mean, I'm
understood.
laughing now at it, but like when you do, I mean, I'm being authentic when I'm doing it. It just that's the way I view it at times these days. Um, and then or you can change, and I chose change because it was for the first time. Well, after doing the research, I came back with my tail between my legs back to the rehab, and I changed. I had to sit through things. I had to sit through uncomfortability. At that point, I was going through a process of a 12-step fellowships, AAs or those sort of places, NAs, and plus obviously group therapy and individual therapy. I was just getting challenged on two fronts. It was mainly CBT or cognitive behavioral based in terms of the therapy internally, which effectively was challenging my disempowering, belief systems. And it was doing it in a way, and here's a real epiphany that I got early days. It was like my counselor was a German guy who's now sadly passed, but absolute legend. And he said, 99% of your thinking is bullshit. He was
Oh,
he was
wow.
speaking he was speaking, to the whole group, not just me, of course. This was
Yeah, yeah.
because, it's our negative stinking thinking per se, right? So that's what he was referring to. And I thought, Jesus, if that thinking, that those thoughts are not true, that means if I wind everything back to my disempowering belief systems, that means they're not true either, right?
Wow. So it's like a realization.
Yeah, the whole thing just opened me up.
Yeah.
It just went click, click, click. Now I still had to go through and, practice all that in my, my daily life. And, that's questioning my thinking. Oh, I'm thinking that I'm projecting. And that's where I kind of really started to embody the whole recovery movement. Um, so yeah, that was the early days of rehab, and I just became a student of recovery. I loved it. I loved every bit of it. There was something that was just so nourishing about it. As part of it was quite traumatic at the same time, but part of it was just this radical. This is transform. This is what I was reading all those self-help books for. But this stuff actually works. It's real. I can see it. I understand it. I'm starting to connect all the dots. I had an experience going down, I think I was just doing an errand down in East St Kilda somewhere, and I just saw this, literally like everything was moving as one, like people were it was just this experience that I went, that was shortly after that realization around the thinking.
Uh,
And, maybe I got a little bit of it addicted to the highs of recovery too, if I, probably did. probably still do if truth be told. But I thought, well, Jesus, this is an addiction. It's much better to be addicted to this than what I was addicted to. So, and I was just like, what do I do now? And I went to Thailand to do a silent meditation for 21 days
What you did?
to find the light, to see where the light was, to see what I was going to do. Yeah, just it was just that kind of, I don't know, call it.
Yeah,
I don't really believe in. Well, maybe I do believe in midlife crises, but it was just a case of I just really needed to break out of what I was doing, consulting corporate world sort of that I was in, but sort of not in, if you know what I mean. Um, and then, after that, I think it was a Buddhist meditation camp near Chiang Mai in Thailand, and I think just so people are aware as well, because I'd gone through quite a traumatic experience, particularly with my partner breakup at that point. But um, I think well, in hindsight, I mean, I did what I did. Obviously, I don't look back and regret it now, but it was too early to go into a silent meditation retreat
yeah.
after that sort of trauma.
Wow, yeah,
So with the obviously the knowledge I have now, I wouldn't
yeah.
recommend anyone to do what I did, but that
Oh,
was just kind of a bit like me. I just jump in and
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like when you do things, you like to sort of push it to the extreme. Like even going from like working overseas in that corporate world to going, all right, I'm going to rehab for 12 months. Like I feel like that's sort of, one extreme to the next. And then after all that happened, I'm going to a silent retreat for 21 days.
yeah,
Yeah, like
I I think it was almost like to get the goods, you got to go through some hard times and you
mm,
got to sit through some hard times. And I think rehab taught me that, like largely. I think at that point when I'd come back from, I had no other option. I needed help, and I think that's sometimes a good place to get to if anyone out there is, struggling with addiction or families out there are struggling with loved ones who are in addictive cycles. You've got to get to that almost that, they say you got to get to kind of that rock bottom to then have the willingness to kind of go, "Shit, Jesus, I need help. I can't do
yeah,
this on
yeah.
my own or the way that I used to run things." So it's been a wonderful, layered, challenging, brutal, joyful, all the emotions under the sun, life experience, which has really got me to this point where I kind of understand where to put the compass now and what I'm doing. I'm also studying a master's as well in counseling, so that's my kind of theoretical background to what I do, and I get a lot out of that. I'm here for a purpose, and I'm living that. I've been gifted and granted that through my challenges, and that's what I really come and offer people, who I'm with in a counseling capacity, but also probably like yourself, Matt. You probably relate it kind of like it's really who I am throughout all my life. It doesn't, I mean, I don't, clearly just counsel people in my personal life, but you can't, it can't get it out of the system, like it just is, right? So, it's
Well,
just
it's
what I
just,
do.
well, 100%. It's like you get to rock up to a job and just completely be 100%
Yes,
authentically you. Like,
so true.
um, uh, which who doesn't want to be in a job like that?
Yeah, I've never been like, as an organizer. I mean, I'm not just doing this because I'm on, I've around Thrive, but it is really an organization you can just drop in and be yourself in, and we promote that, right, too. And I think you're really good at doing that, and I think I am too, right? Like promoting that openness and honesty and amongst the employee group. It's been wonderful to support and grow and see you grow as well. This is a bit of a mutual admiration society, isn't it? uh, but it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, to see you grow. And I think what I liked about you, Matt, is how you how you have grown. I mean, not trying to be condescending, like, oh, you were there and now you're there. No, it's more, it was like initially if you don't mind me saying, like it was, I think you were trying to keep things. So I remember having that discussion with you. Do you mind if I talk about this?
Go for it.
All right.
Go your
Because this
hardest.
is what we're trying to get across to the listeners, right? So I
Yeah,
remember,
yeah.
you were struggling with something. I can't remember exactly what, and just some past stuff that had come into the present and probably doubting yourself a bit and what am I going to do? And I just said, well, what's the problem? How can I help? It's like, uh, and we just talked about just being open. And I know because I'd gone down that path before you, and I just said, like, just be open and talk to Jacinta or Cara or whoever it was back
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
um, and just be open. And you said, oh, okay, I'll do that. And then I think the next supervision you went in and you did just that. And then sure enough, that whole weight dropped off your shoulders, I think, from that moment, right? I mean, I'm
yeah,
sure you accumulated a little bit and let go of a bit more as we do, but um, yeah, I think that's the secret is not trying to do this journey clearly, just life generally alone, like it and
yeah.
not trying to carry the burden. And that probably almost is another topic there for the listeners. Yeah.
So I'll tell the listeners I was going through I'll call it extreme anxiety, because I was finally doing something that I was so passionate about.
Mm,
Anyway, I got anxious because my mind was almost telling me, "Wow, what if all this kind of disappears?
yeah.
What will happen if I'm not perfect at this job? Will I have to go back to building?" So there was a lot of fear, sensitive and just completely open and vulnerable is actually very healing. And I thought I had to hide that from the world. But you made me, that was the first time, that I actually understood that it was safe to be me. And,
Mm,
it was, if you weren't there on that day, I wouldn't have been able to realize that. So
so
yeah,
good. Thanks.
to this day, I'm forever thankful for that happening. Like, I'll be honest, it was very scary, because I really respected you, and well, I still do. I really looked up to you, and I'm like, oh, I can't see Dale like this.
Uh,
What's he going to think of me? Like, but
you should have
actually,
seen me round the corner.
yeah, yeah.
No, no, not that. No,
Oh,
I was probably like nervous about the next step as well.
yeah. Yeah. So no, but I can remember, I just bawled my eyes out.
Mm,
And after that, I was like, oh, I'm okay now, and that's all I needed. But without that sort of safety there, which I think is so good about Thrive.
I mean, talking about post-traumatic growth, right? Like comes from those difficult challenges, when you're in the valleys, so to speak, and you know, it's where you need to lean on almost something other than yourself to get you through it, right?
Yeah. Would you be doing what you're doing if you didn't go through what you went through, do you think?
No,
Or you wouldn't be
I
like,
don't think I would have found it. Not in the depth that I found it now.
yeah. So you had to go through that.
Well, I don't, I'm not really a believer in sliding doors. So I believe what I
Yeah.
experienced was exactly what I was supposed to experience. All the decision making, everything, even the poor, there's a lot of poor decision making in that lot, was necessary to get me to where I am now. And that's, that without, that's a wonderful place or way to think, because you don't have that regretful, even the difficulties. I mean, there's times I go, oh my God, did I do that? I still have that going on. And you know, God, that was just stupid and fearful and all the rest of it. But
Mm.
I really truly believe if, we're given these set of experiences in life and we have to, get into it and do the
Mm.
best we can and ask questions and keep knowing that there's always there's always something greater than yourself that's kind of, I believe in dictating the terms of how we live and all the rest of it and
Yeah.
plugging into that source as much as possible.
Yeah. All right. Well, we might finish up. What do you think?
Sounds good. And we didn't even talk about your intro, so that'll be for
Uh,
next time.
no, well, that's the thing. We never really know how these things are going to go, do we? We just sort of go with the wind.
No, but I am interested and I think it'd be great for the listeners and viewers as well to hear about your story, Matt, because I know there's a lot of, I'm going to give them a teaser around your inland experiences in Australia's centre, that I'd be keen to sort of glean on and some of the learnings you've got out of, living and being in those areas and because it's pretty fascinating.
I mean, it's a bit of a difference from Central Australia to country Victoria in a way.
Yeah.
Nothing against country Victoria or anything like that, but yeah, there's some real differences. But yeah, maybe we can touch on that in the next episode.
Sounds good, Matt.
Yeah.
See you, mate.
If you or someone that you know needs immediate support, please see on the screen a list of hotlines you can call. And to book in with a clinician at Thrive, you can phone the reception or book online. And remember, you're never alone.